So welcome back to the American LFC show. We've been away for a few weeks. I've been out on the road, and I know Salim has been tied up with work commitments, but it's just me today, and I'm afraid Reds fans, another day of disappointment as Liverpool recorded their fourth draw in a row, three of which have been at home against teams that were promoted this past season from the Championship. And yeah, I know there'll be lots of questions being asked. So let's just look at the game overall. Some of the positives, the result not being one, is they did do better. They showed a lot more attacking intent than they did in the previous draws at Anfield against Sunderland and Leeds. And I think that was demonstrated by a first half performance where they had 16 shots at goal, 5 which were on target. Wirtz kept up his good run, scoring for Liverpool. And of course, another big talking point will be the penalty missed by Szoboszlai. So that was a positive. But I'm afraid that in the second half, even though the Reds came close a few times, there were a couple of times when the ball was knocked off the line. The second half performance really didn't build upon the first half. And Burnley's equaliser, which was well worked, came after a little spell when Liverpool did something which we've seen many, many times this year, where they get very sloppy coming out of the back. And Burnley had one good opportunity earlier, which Konate almost stuck in his own net. And only moments later, minutes later, Edwards went through this time and he scored. And so in some respects, I think the Reds only have themselves to blame. This, as I say, has been a recurring theme this season. There's a sloppiness within the ranks. And even though they have lots of quality players, I think at the end of the day, they can only look at themselves. So I'm sure, I haven't seen anything else on the internet yet, but I know that people will probably be calling for the head of Arne Slot, particularly as Mark Gahey additionally is now going to Manchester City, although I don't think that's the manager's fault. And it's disappointing. These are teams that Liverpool really should be beating. But you can't deny that in the second half, Liverpool looked terribly shaky at times, even though they do have a lot of control of the ball, a lot of possession. The positive that I mentioned earlier, okay, a lot more attacking intent. There wasn't so much of the boring possession football without going anywhere. I think they tried to play the ball forward more than they had done, say, against Leeds, where it was a very, very poor performance overall by Liverpool on the night. So what does that leave going forward? Liverpool go to France this week for a tricky game against Marseille, a game that they need points. And presumably Marseille can be a bit of a bear pit. And if the home team gets ahead of steam, gets some energy, gets ahead, it can be a very, very difficult game for Liverpool. So it'll be interesting to see how the manager deals with the game. And then, of course, they have a difficult game next Saturday down on the south coast at Bournemouth. So just looking at some of the individual performances today, Wirtz kept up his scoring record. He certainly started to record some stats of late. Personally, I felt earlier in the season he was maybe doing a little better than perhaps the critics and some Liverpool fans were giving him credit for. Many, many times he seemed to be making runs. He wasn't being found. He was creating for others, and they weren't finishing. But to give him his due, he's certainly starting to come good. And it was a comprehensive finish that he had in the first half to give Liverpool the lead. So that is one positive. Kerkez had a good game down at Arsenal, especially in the second half. I think the one thing that we haven't seen from him since he's come to Anfield is good attacking intent when he's been moving forward. And I think we saw some signs in the first half that he was starting to add that to his game. And in fact, very, very early on in the game, he seemed to get through. And I thought he might have shot and he tried to square it instead. But there are a few signs that he's showing a little more going forward. But having said that, even though Andy Robertson was only on for a very short period, Robertson's crossing so far, from what we've seen from Kerkez, Robertson's crossing is vastly superior and a lot more dangerous. So I guess that is something that Kerkez has to add to his game if he's to continue improving. And it was certainly something that we saw when he was playing for Bournemouth, where he was a very, very dangerous player and looked very much like an Andy Robertson clone when he signed for Liverpool. So can he add that to his game? He's been improving. Wirtz has been improving. Ekitike still looks good. I think in the midfield, Liverpool were solid without being on the top of their game. I'm sure Szoboszlai will come in for some criticism because he missed the penalty. And of course, the million-dollar question that's going to be asked now is with Mo Salah finishing up this weekend in the African Nations Cup, what will his role be coming forward? So while he's been away, there's been a lot of debate, as you might expect. He hadn't had a great season prior to leave for the African tournament. There's been the odd flash here and there, but I think there'd been more questions than there had been answers. So it'll be interesting to see what the manager does. And I feel very much that Salah can play a role going forward, but it has to be on the terms of what Arne Slot wants. So what does that mean? What that means is if he doesn't start a game, it's not disrespectful. He's just another player that's in the squad. Obviously, he's had a great history at Liverpool, but if he's not showing form, then he has to expect his role to change. I think that's a normal part of football and what have you. So as long as he's prepared to toe the line, sometimes he might start, sometimes he's subbed, sometimes he's taken out. I think he has to accept that. And if he can't accept that, then really you can't use him as as part of the overall team plan. And as I say, he's just another player. Yes, he has the best history of any player at Anfield right now, but it's the now that matters. What happens in the next game, the previous game, that's how he should be judged. So I don't know if he'll be involved for the game against Marseille, but he's certainly going to come into the mix at Bournemouth. So what will the manager do? It'll be interesting to see. If it was me, and obviously I'm not the manager, I wouldn't start him because I'd want to see how he reacts to maybe playing off the bench or given that kind of a role. But having said that, it might be a good time to start him because I think it's fair to say that Gakpo isn't setting the heather on fire right now. I think that's how I would put it. So it'll be interesting to see whether Slot takes that route. But anyway, so another draw, another disappointment, I suppose. Liverpool just about cling on to a Champions League place with Manchester United breathing down their necks. And I have to say that I was very impressed with Manchester United today. They were well worth the 2-0 win over Manchester City. And I guess at the top of the table, we have the Nottingham Forest game coming up. Can they increase their lead at the top? For those of you who've been watching, you should know that obviously I don't want Manchester City to win the league this year. And I think my theme is that until the 115 charges are answered, I don't like the fact that Manchester City continues to go on signing players here, there, and everywhere, whereas other teams that have cooperated with the charges, Everton, Nottingham Forest, have been penalised. But anyway, I won't get into that anymore. So Marseille in midweek, Bournemouth next Saturday. Yeah, lots of questions to be answered, and I'm sure that the manager will be asked them. And if I was Arne Slot, I'd be asking a few questions of my players. So in some respects, compared to the Leeds and the Sunderland games, it was a better performance, but yeah, not enough. So anyway, hit the like button, subscribe. I'd love to hear what you think about the Reds. Anything I'm overlooking, and we will see you midweek. Bye now.